All right, good afternoon, class. Today I want to start by going over the quiz that you guys had on Friday. So a lot of common mistakes. I just want to go over it, make sure people can try to understand it a little bit better, so you guys can retake it eventually when I come back. Or yeah, and also it is really important you guys understand this stuff because it is really important. So the quiz was broken up into 3 sections. The first 2 problems were what happens if, or pretty much what do you do when you're adding 2 numbers of different signs, right? Right here it says it. Adding opposite signs. So like that means whenever you got a positive and a negative, or a negative and a positive. The rule there is, remember, a positive and a negative, they go in different directions on the number line, right? So they're not combining, they're not going to make a bigger positive number, or not going to get a bigger negative number. Common mistake here I saw a lot of people put is negative 12. But you got to think about what it does on the number line. Here you're going forward 5, then back 7. There's no way you're going to be all the way at negative 12. Right? So the rule, I've said it many times already, is if they're different signs, you do the bigger one, take away the smaller one. So you're doing 7, take away 5, which is 2. And you know it's going to be negative 2 because the negative number's bigger. And then for number 2, same thing. I saw a lot of people put negative 11. Again, a way you can check your answers also is if you even want to draw a number line, you can until you get more comfortable with it. But here you're going back 8 and going forward 3, so you know you're somewhere in this area, right? So you know negative 11 does not make sense because negative 11 would be somewhere over here. So again, same thing, the same rule. If they're different signs, you do the bigger one, which in this case is the negative 8, take away the small one. 8 take away 3 is 5. The big one is negative, so that's just going to be negative 5. Alright, so then number 3 and 4, it says what happens when you're adding 2 negatives. So here, again, visualize it on the number line. When you're adding 2 negatives, negatives take you to the left, right? So you're adding another negative, that makes you further to the left, makes a bigger negative number. So that's why when you're adding 2 negatives, you combine it together to make a bigger negative. So negative 11 plus negative 4 is just going to be 11 plus 4 is 15, but they're both negative, so it makes negative 15. Same thing with negative 3 plus negative 6 makes negative 9. A lot of you guys did good on these, but a lot of people, a good amount of you guys also kind of messed up on them and got confused. You guys got to make sure you understand those. And then from there, the subtraction ones. This is where I got the most mistakes from a lot of you guys. It's just make sure to rewrite the problems first. A lot of you guys wrote your answer out. You put negative 2. First of all, that's wrong. And even if you got the right answer, you put negative 16. I won't give you points there because it says make sure to rewrite the problems. Remember, it's rewriting it as addition. So what we know is taking away 7 is the same as adding negative 7. Remember, you keep that first number the same. That's how you should rewrite it. Way too many of you guys just wrote negative 9 plus 7. You can't just change from subtraction and addition. You got to change that 7 into the opposite of what it is. It's a positive 7 right now, so yeah, make sure you put a negative there. So that's how you rewrite it. Then you got negative 9 plus negative 7 makes negative 16. Then for number 6, again, if I'm rewriting that one, we're subtracting negative 8 right now. It becomes adding. What's the opposite of negative 8? Positive 8. And you guys got to remember to always leave that first number alone. You keep it the same. 2 plus 8 is 10. Because what I want to keep telling you guys is that taking away negative is the same as like adding a positive. Alright, so hopefully that helps you guys understand it better. I'll try to give you guys the opportunity to retake it when I come back. So from here, I'm have you guys go to page 60 in your module. Give you guys a few seconds to get there. You guys are gonna be taking a little bit of notes. Well, just follow along as I teach you guys a little bit of new stuff. So again, page 60. The learning target says I can rewrite negative mixed numbers to add or subtract them. Remember, mixed number is a number that has a whole number and a fraction next to it. So again, page 60. Alright, so again, page 60. I'll draw a little, do a little demonstration. You guys don't have to write anything for this part, just make sure you guys follow along. So 2 plus 2/3. So if we got the number line, again, just follow along with this part. I'll let you guys know when you guys got to write it down. So if I'm doing a number line for it, you got 2, right? So you go 2, and then you go 2/3 more. So you're going part, it's not all the way, it's not one whole, right? If it was adding one whole, you go to 3. But you're only adding 2/3. So where would you end up? Just think about that. What number would this be? So this here would be 2 2/3. It's easier than it seems. So basically, if you're adding a whole number and a fraction, you can just combine it and put it together as a mixed number like that. Okay, so but then what if I'm doing -3 plus -1/3? Just think about what that looks like on the number line. Alright, so you go back 3, right? Then you go back another third. So you're only going back a little bit, you're going back 1/3, right? So where would this be? There you end up. That's 3 and 1/3. Or -3 and 1/3. Key thing about that negative sign there, right? So what I'm pretty much trying to show you guys is here it's the same thing as the other one. When you're adding a whole number and a fraction, you just put it together. You could do that when they're both negative also. -3 plus -1/3 makes -3 1/3. Important thing though, you can only do that if they're both negative or if they're both positive. I'll show you guys some real quick. But if you got -3 plus +1/3, that is not gonna get you -3 and 1/3. Right? This only works if they're both negative or they're both positive. So keeping that in mind, now I want you guys are gonna be writing some stuff down. On page 60, it says rewrite each mixed number as a sum of two signed numbers. So the sum means, remember, sum means addition, right? So rewriting this as a sum of two numbers. You're doing the same thing for all this. You're kind of just breaking apart the mixed number. So I want you guys real quick think about what do you think would go in those two blanks? What two numbers combine to get -9 5/8? So it's going to be -9. Common mistake people put here is they just put 5/8. Remember, this whole thing is negative. That means when you break it apart, both parts have to be negative. So it should look like that. And then the same thing with the -2 1/2. You break it apart to -2 plus -1/2. That key part is the negative sign. Do not forget that. Then C is just 8 plus 11/12. Alright. Right here, since it's positive, it breaks apart to become two positive numbers. Back here, when it was negative, it breaks apart to become two negative numbers. Alright, then go to 61. Now this is where you're doing the opposite. This is represent each sum, since these are all sums, right? they're all addition, represent each sum as a mixed number. That means you combine these two together. You could just put it, since they're both negative, right? You can put them together like that. Remember, you can only do it if they're both negative or they're both positive. Combine those and get 30 and 1/8. Combine the last one, get negative 17 and 1/9. Hopefully that's not too hard. I'm gonna have you guys now go back to page 59. We're gonna look at the very bottom. So right here we have pretty complicated looking problem. We're gonna get the answer to it. It represents the following expression as a single rational number. Basically, it's just as one single number. Basically, they're asking, when you add all three of these together, what are you gonna get? What's the answer gonna be? So we'll walk through it together. The first thing we want to do, and we're going to be doing this a lot of this, kind of like what we did earlier. You see a subtraction sign, right? Whenever you see a subtraction sign, actually before I say that, I want you to differentiate. This is a negative sign, and this is a subtraction, right? Right here, they're kind of similar, but they're not exactly the same. So this is a subtraction. This is just a negative. We're changing the negative. We're not changing the negative. We're changing the subtraction, just like we did when we were, like I talked about when we went over the quiz. So the first part, I'm just keep it the same for now. So we're gonna change subtracting to adding, right? But we turn it to adding. What comes next? Not 3/5 anymore, right? It becomes negative 3/5. Next, I'm going to break apart these mixed numbers just like what we just did. So negative 2 and 2/5 becomes negative 2 plus what? Just think about what comes next. Negative 2/5, right? Not 2/5, but negative 2/5. And let me write this a little bit bigger. And then 3 1/4 becomes 3 plus 1/4. You'll see why I did that in a second. What I'm going to do here is now we're going to try to see what's kind of easy to combine. What about these two? Are they both negative or they're different signs? They're both negative, right? So what did we talk about earlier when we're adding two numbers that are both negative? I'm going to do it on the side. If they're both negative, you're going to add it and combine it together. Remember, when we're adding fractions, you need common denominators. That means the denominators, which are 5 here, they got to be the same. They're the same, so that's good. So when we add them, we got to add my numerators with the negative 2 plus a negative 3. Negative 5, right? So you get negative 5. And on the bottom, remember when you're adding fractions, it stays the same. Right here, what's 5 over 5? Hopefully you guys remember that 5 over 5 is 1. But it's not 5 over 5, it's negative 5 over 5. So this becomes negative 1. So back to the problem over here, we combine these two. That's why I drew those two little things to show that those are what we're combining. That makes negative 1. And then I'm going to just go ahead and bring down everything else. Bring down that negative 2. Bring down that 3. Bring down that 1/4. The problem right here is a lot easier now because we got a bunch of whole numbers which are easier to add than fractions, right? We could deal with that fraction at the end. Let's combine these two. What's negative 2 plus negative 1? Once again, they're the same sign, right? So you combine. Nice little rhyme there. Same sign, combine. 2 plus 1 is 3, but since they're both negative, you got negative 3. Then go ahead and bring down the other 3 and bring down that 1/4. We haven't done anything with it yet, so we got to bring it down. Next, what's negative 3 plus positive 3? Remember, these numbers are opposites, right? Or the fancy word, additive inverses. When you combine those, you get 0. So what we could do here, we just cross them out. we know they cancel each other out. Now, what do we got left? All we got left is that 1/4 here. So that's our final answer. Now, it's kind of a lot of steps. So let's kind of recap. Whenever you see subtraction with these problems, we change the adding, then the number after becomes the opposite of what it was. 3/5 becomes a negative 3/5. So we got everything's addition. Now it makes it a lot easier. We could broke apart the mixed numbers just like what we kind of did earlier. Then we combined these two fractions first, because over here you can see negative 2/5 and negative 3/5 makes negative 5/5, which is just negative 1. So that's where that negative 1 came from. Bring down that negative 2, bring down that 3, bring down that 1/4, bring down everything you haven't done anything with yet. Then from there, slowly add the whole numbers. Negative 2 and negative 1 makes negative 3. Bring down that 3, bring down that 1/4. Right here, negative 3 and positive 3 makes 0, right? Because they're opposites. And all I got left is that 1/4. That's our final answer. So I know the problem looks pretty hard, but it's not anything that's too complicated if you break down to look at each individual step. And we'll be doing more practice with it and make it a lot easier. Alright, so let's see. From there, I'm going to have you guys go to 61. Alright, yeah, so 61. Here it says, Mr. Mitchell lost 10 pounds. Let's highlight that. Over the summer by jogging each week. By winter, he gained 5 1/8 pounds. Represent this situation with an expression involving signed numbers. Remember, signed numbers just means positive or negative numbers. And then they want you to figure out what's the overall change in his weight. So if I'm writing expressions, it's just like writing a math problem based off of this word problem, right? What's the first thing that happens? He lost 10 pounds. So if you lose it or lost it, it's a negative. Then he gained, so you're going to add 5 1/8. And they want to figure out what's the total change. So basically, we've got to add these two numbers together. So just like what we did in the other problem, we're going to break this apart, right? We're going to break up that mixed number. There's no subtraction here, so we don't got to worry about that. We got negative 10 plus, what happens when we break that apart? 5 1/8 becomes 5 plus 1/8. Then do negative 10 plus 5. Are they the same sign or different? They're opposite signs, right? So you do the bigger one, take away the small one. 10 take away 5 is 5. But since the bigger one was negative, it's negative 5. Then you do plus 1/8. So a lot of you guys would go ahead and put negative 5 1/8 there. That's wrong. I want you guys to see if anybody can think about why it's not negative 5 1/8. If anybody wants to share why, pause the video and they can share their answer. Okay, so it's not negative 5 1/8. We can't just combine them because one's a negative and one's positive, right? Alright, so let me think. So I'm going to do it up here. We're going to change that negative 5 to negative 4 and 8/8. Let's recap why that's okay. What's 8/8? That's 1, right? And what's negative 4? Or what's 1 and 4? That makes 5, right? That's why we got the 5 there, and it's okay to change like that. Plus the 1/8. Let's break this apart. I know it looks like extra work here, but it's the same thing we did earlier. We break it apart to negative 4 and negative 8/8. Actually, let's take a step back. we could. This one's easier to just combine these two or add them or subtract them. Well, are we gonna add or subtract? You got a negative and a positive, right? So different signs means you subtract. What's 8 eighths take away 1 eighth? 7 eighths. Right? And what do we still got left that we didn't do anything with? A negative 4. So that's your answer, negative 4 and 7 eighths. Let's recap that real quick. Lost 10 pounds, right? That's why it's negative 10. Then he gained 5 1/8, so that's why it's plus 5 1/8. Right here, we broke up the 5 1/8 to become 5 plus 1/8. Add the whole numbers first. Get the negative 5 there. And negative 5 plus 1/8. I changed that negative 5 to negative 4 and 8 eighths. Just so it's easier to combine with the fractions, right? 8 eighths take away 1 eighth is 7 eighths. Right here, we're not adding 8 eighths and 1 eighth, right? That doesn't get us 9 eighths because this part is with the negative. So it's negative. And so you're taking away 8, take away 1 is 7. You got that negative 4 there. And again, you're taking it away because of that negative sign. Different signs mean you subtract them. Alright, let's do this one final problem, I believe. Yeah, so this is the last problem. This is Jamal is completing a math problem and represents the expression. So that's the problem. He's representing this expression with a single rational number. That means he's getting the answer to this problem with one single number all the way down there. This is justify each of Jamal's steps and then show another way to solve the problem. We're going to not worry about this part. We're just going to justify his steps. Basically say, what did he do in each step? It's a lot of steps, right? But he eventually got it down to one final answer. We're going to say what he did in each step. So first, looking at, this is the original problem. What's different from that and his first step here? I want you guys to think about that. What's different from this part and this part? So you see the original problem, it's subtracting negative 3 2/7, right? But what did he change it to? Adding negative 3 2/7. So he changed the subtracting 3 2/7 to adding negative 3 2/7. That's just like what we've been doing, right? We rewrite subtraction as adding the opposite. And that's almost always going to be your first step if you see a subtraction problem. So next, what's different from here and here? Not much, right? All he did was he moved those two numbers around, right? So he moved a couple numbers around. And it's okay to move numbers around when you're adding. That's called the commutative property. I want to write that down. The commutative property just means when you switch some numbers around when you're adding to make it easier. So after that, what did he do to get from here to here? This part here is a lot longer than this part, right? But you look at it, it's not anything too complicated. He broke apart that mixed number and broke apart that mixed number also. So let's write that, broke apart mixed number. Alright, so after he broke apart the mixed number, what did he do to get from here to here? Not much, right? All he did was switch these two numbers around. So move some numbers around. Again, that's called commutative property. Commutative property is when you move some numbers around. And the reason he's doing that, well, we'll see right here, is because, all right, let's look at the next step. Here, it's a lot shorter now, right? Looking at that step where we haven't written anything yet. Think about, where did that -1 come from? You combine these two together, right? What's 5/7 and 2/7? That makes 7/7, which is 1 whole. But since they're both negative, that makes -1. So he moved some numbers around so that it's easier to add these two together. So what he did right here was simply he added -5/7 and -2/7 to get -1. Okay, so then let's look at the next step. What's different? Where did that -6 come from? I want you guys to think about that. Where did that -6 come from? Right here, right? What's -5 plus -1? -6. Just write that. Then where'd the -9 come from? Right here. -6 plus -3 is -9. Then finally, alright, let's write that real quick. Finally, he did -9 plus 8. Since they're different signs, you do the big one, 9, take away 8 is 1. Since the big one is negative, answer is -1. And we don't got to write anything for that. It's pretty self-explanatory. So just kind of, let me summarize that real quick. Main things, the first step, whenever you see a subtraction, change it to adding the opposite of what it was. 3 2/7 becomes -3 2/7. Then he moves some numbers around. That part you guys don't necessarily have to do. Sometimes it could be easier for you though. Then the other big thing we talked about today, we're breaking apart the mixed number, right? And then from there, just kind of self-explanatory, just adding. Alright, so we will stop there. No homework. Just make sure you guys have written everything down. If you need to go back to copy that down, make sure you do that. I might have you guys turn in some notes that we took in the module later this week. So make sure you guys have that all written down. Alright, bye everyone.